When I first caught up with the main ReZero novels, I remember reading this theory and being blown away by how well-structured and comprehensive it was. Later, when I caught up on the side stories, I expected to find holes in it. To my surprise, though, the theory held up remarkably well. I'm confident this will surprise you too, even if you're a novel reader. However, if you're an anime-only viewer, you might want to come back after Season 4 ends, as this theory covers a lot of what happens secretly behind the scenes. That said, if you don't mind spoilers, feel free to stick around. While it's best to be caught up through Season 4, you'll honestly understand most of it if you've watched everything released so far, provided your memory is fresh. After all, the theory I'm about to share brings together all the little mysteries the series has left breadcrumbed so far and pieces them together with lore fragments from Arc 6. To be clear, this isn't my theory. I honestly wish I had been the one to spot all the intricate connections I'm about to show you. I generally don't watch much ReZero content on YouTube because, having read all the available literature, it's hard to find anything that surprises me in a sea of summaries. So that should give you an idea of just how much this theory impacted me. That nearly 4 years after first finding it, I still consider it a solid theory. Even though I didn't create it, I've taken the liberty of fleshing out certain points that time has proven true. Since I'm aware that my obvious fondness for this theory might cloud my judgment, I also ran it by an acquaintance who I know has deep knowledge of the lore. I'll be pointing out parts I think are incorrect myself, but to ensure I'm not being biased, I decided to get a second opinion. Just a heads up, this is part 2 of a theory I'm currently breaking down. In part 1, we covered the potential identity of an entity hidden in the Pleiades watchtower, and in this part, we're going to cover an interesting angle regarding the reason for Subaru's memory loss. If you enjoy this video, I'd highly recommend checking out part 1 for more context. Alright, let's get started. Welcome back to the biggest ReZero Season 4 theory, part 2. In this second part, we'll cover points 7 through 14. We'll discuss the purpose of the Library of the Dead, the true goal of the tower's trials, and we'll also show how the tower seems to actually know that Subaru possesses return by death. This section speculates on how the alleged authority of gluttony wielded by Flugel could be responsible for creating the Books of the Dead. The mechanism used to create the Books of the Dead is, in a way, very similar to the authority of gluttony. In Chapter 62 of Arc 6, amnesiac Subaru formulates his own theory about where these books come from.
俺はそれが割と納得のいく説明だと思ってる。死んだ人間の魂が再利用される仕組み。そこで洗い落とされる記憶がこの書庫で死者の書きって本になる。
In this passage, Subaru explains that the system creating the books recycles the souls of the dead along with their memories. Once the soul is drained of its memories, the system automatically generates a book of the dead. Then he adds the following.
本当ならオドラグナがやってたはずの魂の固化作業を勝手に自分でやってる。それで削ぎ落とした記憶を自分の腹に入れて文字通り他人の人生を食い物にしてきたってわけだ。
If Subaru's assumption is correct, what the authority of gluttony does to its victims is eerily similar to the system's process. While Odlagna strips memories from the soul and stores them in the form of a book, gluttony strips memories from the soul and stores them in its stomach. The theory's author highlights the similarity between both processes to argue that this is possible because Flugel also wields the authority of gluttony. On top of that, when a person reads someone's Book of the Dead, a book which, let me remind you, is a product of the tower's exclusive process, those strange symbols appear once again.
The girl in black was abnormally strong. Her way of killing was amazing. She knew more about how to kill rather than how to live. Everything else except for that was estranged in her.
だったらあなたに任せた方がうまくやってくれるわ。
But let's continue with the video. This point explains why Subaru's books appeared and disappeared out of thin air, and also breaks down why their appearance isn't random at all. It's established that in this library, the books aren't always where they're supposed to be. Yeah, I know that sounds confusing, but basically, it means the books change locations every day. And when you add the fact that this library holds the books of people from all over the world and from every era, well, finding a specific one would be incredibly difficult. And I'm not the one saying this. Anastasia herself says it.
ここにある本、過去から今に至るまでの世界中の人間の名前があるんとちゃう？そうやとしたら、目的の誰かの本を探そなったら、どれだけかかるんやろね？
Yet despite this, several books are found by sheer chance, even though we were told the odds of finding the specific book you're looking for are practically zero. For example, Reed's book was found almost immediately not once, but twice by Subaru, and on both occasions, he had just been wishing he could find it. But I don't see this as just plot convenience, and I'll explain why. After activating Corleones and reading Reed's book for the second time, Subaru can sense his ally's presence through his authority every time he returns by death. However, it's not until the loop where he stays alone in his room that he senses another presence, or rather, a faint light through his authority. In retrospect, this presence was what made it possible for him to find his own books of the dead. But the weirdest part is that when he found them all in perfect order. I mean, first he found the book where he died at the hands of Elsa, then the book narrating his second death by her, and right after that, out came the book describing how he died to the three thugs at the very beginning. There's nothing strange about Subaru finding his book. What is strange is that he finds them exactly when he's alone and in the exact order needed for him to regain his memories. Remember how I mentioned earlier that Flugel has control over the books of the dead? Well, what if he also controls where and when they appear in the library? If that's the case, then if a normal person walks through the library, they might only find the books Flugel wants them to find. This would explain the immediate appearance of Reed's book at crucial plot moments, and also why Subaru's books appeared at such a convenient time. But let's take a breather and move on to the next point. This part of the video speculates that one of the abilities of Flugel's authority is the power to manifest people through their memories. Furthermore, this technique is very similar to what we saw Gluttony do in Priestella, where they took on someone's appearance. When Reed's Book of the Dead is read, it's discovered to be empty. This leads Aridna to suspect the following.
死者の書きからレイドの過去を参照することができなかった。それは今、その本の中にレイド・アストレアの記録がないからだ。レイドの記録は今現在別の形で使用されている。試験官としてのレイド・アストレアをこの塔に再現するために。
This ability to manifest someone from their memories is suspiciously similar to the ability Gluttony has, where they transform into someone using devoured memories. I mean, Reed's memories were used to recreate him as the guardian of the second trial, and this recreation follows a principle similar to the current Gluttony's technique. This is yet another piece of evidence pointing to the resemblance between the sage's alleged authority and the authority of Gluttony. But if this really was an authority, it could explain why Reed was able to take over Roy's body after being devoured by him. Roy ate the memories of the first Sword Saint, but Flugel's authority inside Reed remained active. This allowed Reed to hijack Roy's body, even though it should have gone the other way around. Even Reed himself doesn't seem to have a clue how he pulled it off.
厳密には食った相手を再現する暴食の権能を策手にとって相手の自我を塗りつぶしただよな。
難しいこと言ってんじゃねえよ。んなどうでもいいこと俺が知るかよ。で俺が知りもしねえことでエバってんじゃねえ。正義が。
Anyway, continuing with the theory, if we consider that Flugel's authority allows him to manifest people from memories, this could explain several situations seen throughout this arc. In Chapter 25, when we meet Reed for the first time, he's introduced in a peculiar way. The scene describes him as basically appearing out of thin air, and he looks confused about why he's there. Furthermore, for a while, it seems like he's talking to someone we can't see. This alleged entity explains the trials to him, and once Reed gets the gist of it, he prepares for the evaluation.
Somewhat stopping his shaking feet, Subaru stood. At the same time, he pried the clinging Shaola off. It was a careless act that made her fall to the floor face first, but there was no time to consider that. But...
んだ、おめえ。あれか、おめえ。ふざけてんのか、おめえ。
人の面見るなり失礼か、おめえ。
The man bit clenched his molars and roared a hearty yet violent laughter. Ignoring Subaru, who was clearly confused, the man looked over the white room and nodded to himself. Oh? Oh, righty, then spoke again.
じゃあ始めつか。
始めるって。待て。さっきからお前勝手に話進めすぎだろ。
Also, remember when Rem manifested to help Subaru in this arc? Well, the exact same thing happened here as it did with Reed, and the person supposedly only he could see. A version of Rem appeared right in front of Subaru and Rui, but only he could see her. For some reason we still don't know, Rui couldn't see the maid. So far we have Flugel with an authority that allows him to manifest people through their memories. Rui discards Rem's memories, and in the very next scene, we have Rem's memory manifesting and appearing before Subaru. Suspicious, right? According to this theory, it's safe to say that Flugel was manipulating several people throughout this arc using his authority. Anyway, let's move on. This part of the video speculates that the monolith trial taking place here isn't actually a real trial. Instead, it's just the tower's way of filtering out the only person capable of taking the true one. In case you've forgotten, the third floor of the tower is where the evaluations begin with the monolith trial, a trial that is honestly disappointing if we compare it to the evaluations in Season 2. Back then, the first trial with Echidna caused huge problems and sparked major character development for everyone involved. And while the characters could technically retake the trial as many times as they wanted, it was still a process that inflicted a lot of pain and trauma. However, here in Arc 6, you can take exams as many times as you like without suffering any penalty whatsoever. But things change if, instead of viewing this as an official evaluation, we think of passing the monolith exam as merely a mechanism that grants you the right to take the tower's true trials. I know all this sounds pretty dishonest on the part of the Watchtower's creator, but even the naive Amelia realizes this and points out the following.
性格の素直じゃない人が塔を作ったってところでずっと考えてたの。
I think the way Shaola presented the tower's trials wasn't entirely correct, and in reality, the true trials are structured differently. But what does it take to face those trials? We're about to cover that now. This part of the video speculates on why exactly Subaru's presence is necessary for the real trials of this place to begin. When we arrive at the tower, we find out that Shaola attacks anyone who gets close while she waits for her master's return. We don't know why she recognizes Subaru as her master, although she claims it's because of his scent. But it's safe to say that if you're planning a field trip to the tower, you need Subaru just to get there and be let through. Then we reach the third floor, the monolith trial, which requires specific knowledge from Subaru's original world. And to make it even weirder, the specific knowledge required was something Subaru was already familiar with. I mean, it wasn't an exam requiring knowledge of physics or cars. This test consisted of knowledge about stars. I think it's obvious that everything was set up so that Subaru would be the only one capable of passing the exam. We could also consider Al, but he hasn't shown himself to be as knowledgeable on this subject as the protagonist. In short, what is needed to face the true trials is Subaru's presence. And something I haven't mentioned until now is that the tower where all this happens is called Pleiades. In Japanese, Pleiades translates to Subaru, so the tower is basically named after him. If that doesn't convince you of the obvious connection between Subaru and the tower, well, what can I tell you? Let's just move on to the next point. This part of the video claims that based on the obvious connection between the tower and Subaru, the trials here were designed with the specific knowledge that he can die and redo things. As I mentioned earlier, when possessed Subaru kills Mei Li, the entity murdering her, who we believe is Flugel, says something peculiar to her. He tells her that she has broken the rules and that he expects her to act more aggressively next time. This implies that Flugel is aware of Subaru's ability, and if he is indeed the one creating the Books of the Dead and making them appear for our protagonists, then he must know that Subaru can redo things. I believe the tower's true trials were designed specifically with return by death in mind. Even Shaola received orders stating that if a rule is broken, she is authorized to kill Subaru and his group, simply because that would be a way to force him to redo things for the next attempt. If the tower holds hidden trials and is aware of Subaru's power, then what exactly are these true trials? That's what we're about to find out. This part of the video explains the actual goal behind the tower's true trials. Their ultimate objective would be to test the resolve of Subaru and his friends, just like Echidna's trials did. If we look back in retrospect, specifically from the moment Subaru loses his memories to the moment his group finally overcomes all the tower's obstacles, we see that he had to relearn a lot of things about himself. We know Subaru always thinks his achievements aren't that big of a deal. But at this point in the story, through his amnesia, amnesiac Subaru gets to look at original Subaru as a completely different person. It is here that he finally begins to see his own worth, and it is this positive perspective that gives us the line we all love so much from this arc.
夏木スバル、お前はすごいやつだって。俺はちゃんとわかってるから。お前ならきっと大丈夫だから。
It's only when we look at all the growth Subaru achieved through the tragedy of losing his memories that we can see these trials are genuinely similar to Echidna's trials. As I said, those trials pushed for character development, unlike the boring monolith trial. On top of that, during the course of this trial, something curious happened that we completely missed. Something that helps reinforce this theory about the tower's true trials. It turns out that in amnesiac Subaru's second loop, when he is pushed and tumbles down the stairs, right in the middle of the fall, he hears a voice say,
Memories are what shape people. Who are you?
I believe these are the tower's real trials, making Subaru lose his memories and forcing him to rebuild his identity from scratch. All this while facing the challenges the place throws at him, knowing full well that he possesses return by death. Finally, I suspect there are 3 true trials. Each has a different purpose, and each one begins the moment Subaru visits the Hall of Memories. But we'll cover each of those in a bit. This part of the video argues that the entire encounter with the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony wasn't a coincidence. Instead, it was planned, not by Rui, but by the great sage himself, to use this situation as part of the true trials. If Subaru's memory loss is indeed part of the true trials created by Flugel, then the encounter with Rui was orchestrated by him from the very start. Once they pass the simple monolith trial, they gain access to 2 rooms. First, the room containing the Books of the Dead, and second, the entrance to the second floor of the trial where they face Reed, someone who is already dead and is said to have never been defeated. Even Subaru and Aridna speculate that the Library of the Dead was placed on that floor intentionally, the idea being that it would push them to look for Reed's Book of the Dead in hopes of finding a way to defeat him.
だから、死者の書きを読めば、そいつの死因がわかる。これは立派な攻略手段だ。ひょっとすると、死者の書きは、遠回しにそのためにあるのかもしれねえぜ。
それは、盲点だった。だが、言われてみれば確かに。わざわざ死者を試験官としては位置しているぐらいだ。狙いはそこにあったとしてもおかしくない。
And when they start looking for Reed's book, they find it quickly. Not just once, but twice. Even though, with so many books there, it should have been highly unlikely.
ここにある本、過去から今に至るまでの世界中の人間の名前があるんとちゃう？そうやとしたら、目的の誰かの本を探そなったら、どれだけかかるんやろね。
So Subaru opens the book and encounters Rui, who is also being manipulated by an authority, Flugel's authority. There are too many coincidences here that make me think this wasn't just chance. It was planned. Even Subaru asks himself this very question when he exits the Hall of Memories for the second time.
暴食と接触させられる罠は、ひとまず党の狙いではないだろうから。
それは、まあ、そうだな。
It was unknown whether the creator of the tower had taken into account the transition to being before an instantaneous death. It was perhaps only incidental that it ended up like this, is what he'd like to believe. Otherwise, the personage who prepared the installations in this tower possessed an extremely destructive way of thinking, or possessed a personality nasty like a demon.
Furthermore, Subaru mentions that Rui didn't know he was going to appear, meaning it's not like she planned all of this.
けど、暴食には俺を呼びつけようって考えはなかったように見えた。あいつにとっても、俺が来たのは計算はずって感じで、レイドの死者の鍵に細工はなかったはず。
Something curious to add is that we also don't know how she got to the Hall of Memories, but we do know that Rui has been in that place since she was born and cannot leave. Remember, this theory suggests the possibility that Flugel has been in the Hall of Memories for a long time, even longer than the girl. So, could it be that he put Rui there as part of the trials? I mean, if he already placed one girl as a guardian, why not another? And if we consider the possibility that Flugel was the previous user of the authority of Gluttony, could it be that he was the one who passed the authority on to Rui? Anyway, let's move on to the tower's true trials. And that's it for now. Honestly, I think this second part is my favorite section of the theory. While part 3 is also good, I feel like it deviates a bit too much from the original premise for my taste. Either way, I'll be publishing it in a couple of days for you to see. But if you don't want to wait, you can always become a channel member to skip the wait. I'll see you in the next video for part 3, where we'll detail the true trials of the tower left behind by the group from 400 years ago. Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below.